Thanks a lot, Christine, Jeremy, Glenn. Okay, as I am reminding you guys, this is not the only stage here. There are 22 other ones, one of which you might want to check out is the feature stage, which is almost as big as this one, on the same floor here. And there'll be a whole lot of other keynote content that we're showcasing there. So there's a lot of stuff to get through. Just explore as much as you like. So our next guests will be having a really great conversation about DAOs. Kimball Musk and Rod Beckstrom. Let's have them enter the stage. There he is. Welcome, Kimball. Welcome, Rod. So Kimball Musk really requires no introduction. Serial entrepreneur, food activist, successful restaurateur, board member of SpaceX and Tesla, and now for the past year has been working on a new model of charity called the Big Green DAO, and he's going to be talking about that today. Rod Beckstrom is the former CEO of ICANN and has had all sorts of involvement in internet governments and venture projects for a number of years. Rod is also the author of 4 books, one of which had a big influence on me and led me to believe that he was the perfect person for this interview. It's called The Starfish and the Spider. If you haven't read it, I really recommend that you do. And in fact, at 4 p.m. you're doing a signing over at the bookstore, so go check it out. The book really dives into, and it's really prescient, this was written in 2006, it looks into the power of decentralized organizations. And, you know, I think the analogy here is pretty interesting, right? We've got DAOs, which I think are the starfish, and the old centralized institutions are the spider. Rod's going to be able to make sense of what that all means, and Kimball's going to lay it all into this context. They're also going to do a deeper dive into this conversation at 1 o'clock over at the DAO House, if you really want to go further into it. But for now, Rod, take it away. It's all yours.
Thank you, Michael. Thanks so much, Kimball. Wonderful to be here with you and with everyone in the audience. Why are we calling it the Starfish Moment? It's obvious why we're calling it the Big Green DAO. We're calling it the Starfish Moment because of the book that I co-authored. But when Kimball and I were preparing for this session, we learned an amazing piece of history, which is that we were both in New York on 9/11, and both of our lives changed that day. And the way our lives changed led to what we're doing right now, including my work with the Starfish and Spider and building decentralized organizations and the amazing work that Kimball's doing in the environment. So I wanted to briefly share my story. I was running a public financial software company. I'd started in derivatives, and I was in New York, and when I watched the towers burn, I had 15 clients in the towers, and I was trying to figure out who was below the fire lines, because I figured out if they were below the fire line, they had a chance to survive if they could get out. But if they were above the fire line, and I knew many people above the fire line, it was going to be very difficult and dicey. And I wanted to go and help, but I couldn't get there. I've never felt so helpless in my life, seeing people suffer. And I thought, well, what can I do? And I realized, well, there's only one thing I can do. That is drop my bags and pray, close my eyes and pray. And so I prayed for the people in those towers. I prayed for God to release their suffering or reduce their suffering, because I knew that many would die. And I had a beautiful experience, and the following words came to me that have guided my life ever since. And those words apply to all of us, except for the last bit that's my mission. And those words are, it's a small world, it's a fragile world, and no one is safe until everyone is safe. And you are called to serve the peace. And that moment changed my life. And I've been committed to serving peace ever since. So I dropped all my business obligations at that time, except I was chairman of a venture-backed company that just raised $37 million, building one of the first VPNs in the world for consumers, for privacy. I couldn't leave that. Everything else I dropped completely. And I built a peace network with CEOs. And I had a crazy design idea, which was to model it on Al-Qaeda. Because I said, they're so powerful with limited resources, we want to counter that. Well, that begged the question of how's Al-Qaeda organized? And over the next year, I figured out it's one of the most incredible decentralized organizations in the world and how it was architected and designed. Bone-chillingly good design. So I was studying Al-Qaeda. Many people then said I was an Al-Qaeda expert of the world. And I was building a peace network that grew to 4,000 CEOs, 1,300 registered online within a year. And the energy was incredible because we organized circles and CEOs got to do whatever they wanted to do. But it was an amazing experience, and people were like, God, you figured out how decentralization works, you got to share this with the world. So I said, okay, let's write it in a book. So we need to write it. So we wrote The Starfish and the Spider, which is a handbook on decentralization. It actually explains how decentralized organizations work, what the components are, what the strategy is for competing with centralized organizations and vice versa. And then I got to apply it again. The director of national intelligence really liked the book, so he and the president asked me to come in and run all the cyber centers for the US government, which I did. My military rank was 2.5 star. I guess I have to cut one of these off, but in protocol rank. But I coordinated all the cyber centers across military and intel using these decentralization concepts, and it was very successful. And then after I left there, and Vint Cerf and other people, Vint's kind of the father of the internet, urged me to go run ICANN, which is a global internet coordination organization that's massive, decentralized, multi-stakeholder body that's had tens of thousands of people involved. We use the principles of the book again. So, and I've seen it in many companies. In fact, in the audience, I saw somewhere Heidi here. Heidi runs in Sacramento a school, and when I met her last night, she goes, I know your book, and we used it in my school to go completely revamp how we run the organization. So it's a book on decentralization. That's how my life changed. I'm just so excited to explore this DAO today, the Big Green DAO, Kimball, with you. Kimball is such an exceptional human being. Okay, there's not many people walking this planet who have participated, not in creating unicorns, but in 3 centi-unicorns, okay, from the early days. PayPal, worth over 100 billion, Tesla, worth over $1 trillion at one point, and SpaceX now. Congratulations on the fundraising. And he's not only done that, but a lot of tremendous work in other parts of the world that we're going to hear about now. So, Kimball, please share with us your 9/11 story.
Sure.
And how it sets you on this path.
Well, thank you guys for having me. It's a fascinating community, the Web3 community. I've always found you guys, and the reason I'm in it is just fascinating. You guys are young, you guys have energy, you're super smart, and it's been a wonderful journey for me the past year and a half or so working in Web3. So my 9/11 story, I actually lived a few blocks from the World Trade Centers. I was woken up to the sounds of the plane hitting a building. And I got to, with my wife at the time, we got down to Canal Street by the time the first one fell. We were running, literally just running, and saw the first one fall. It was this giant wall of white smoke coming down and white dust, and people driving out of it at high speeds, people holding onto the outside of cars. We got to Union Square where we saw the second one fall, and it really was, when you're so close to it, you don't actually see it fall. You see it burn, you don't see it fall. And then got to Union Square, see the second one fall, and it felt like reality breaking. And I say that because it broke my path of my life, which was very much a traditional path in the tech world. I was working on amazing technology companies and decided to focus on food. I got this, I'm a classically trained chef, so I got this opportunity to cook for the firefighters. And down in ground zero, right by the giant piles of melting metal, feeding them, and they would come in covered in dust, take off their outer shells and their inner shells, and we would feed them this beautiful food, and they would reconnect with each other, and they'd come back to life as they connected with each other, and they ate the food we were serving them, and then they went back out to find American lives to save. It was just one of the most powerful and moving experiences. So for me, that's where I changed paths, and I said, I'm going to work in the restaurant world, work with food, really bringing joy to people's lives. Food for me is one of those ways. I'm now learning other ways to do it. Big Green DAO is 20 years later, and when I learned about this concept of a decentralized autonomous organization where you could engage a different level of person to help make real decisions, and I mean real decisions, not like advisory decisions. The Web3 technology allows us, all of us, to leverage the talent and knowledge of everyone in the DAO. And if you do it correctly, you do it well through smart contracts that people can see. There's this term trustless out there, but it really enables you to build trust with your community because your rights cannot be taken away. And As a result, what Big Green DAO does, we fund nonprofits in America. We are able to go international, but we're focused on the United States right now. We take funding, we take donations in. If you donate over 1 Ethereum, you get to vote. And then it's progressively decentralizing. So we started out with 6 nonprofits, incredible nonprofits that we knew well. We knew where they were the best, not necessarily the best, but some of the best in the country. And they were really excited to actually have a say in how funding would be given to other nonprofits. They brought on 10 new nonprofits, so they can vote for other nonprofits. They can't vote for themselves, so they brought on 10, and then we brought on a few donors, so there are 19 voters this quarter, and we can bring on up to 86 nonprofits this quarter, and we have a budget this quarter to donate about $860,000, so about 86, at a minimum donation of $10,000. This quarter was the first time we've opened it up to the nonprofit world, and we are over 400 applications so far. So
amazing.
The 19 people that are part of this DAO will use quadratic funding, where you'll get a certain amount of points, and if you try to put all your points into one nonprofit, you start to lose your voting strength. It takes 1 point to assign a point to one nonprofit, but if you assign more points to the same nonprofit, it takes another 4 points to give the same amount of power.
Let's talk about that quadratic voting for a second.
Sure.
It's kind of a fun innovation. It's a little complex. It throws a little spice in the mix.
Yeah.
And I mean, it gets people thinking more.
It's about getting them thinking. Exactly.
Okay.
And collaborating, because if you cannot if you cannot be favoritism, you actually have to get people in the DAO to join you in a vote you're making.
Right.
And so that's the most fun part about it.
But if they give too much and commit too much, they lose power in the future. So you're saying
exactly. Actually, that's another great thing about the DAO, because we're progressively decentralizing. Every time we have a grant-making round, the previous people who had so much power, and it's very exciting to have that power, are giving up power.
Yes.
And that's very cool.
I think one of the cool things we were talking about, Kimball, is how you really try to design this thing so no one could accumulate too much power. And by the way, trustless is a word that works for me. The word I prefer is to say, rather than trusting institutions, we're trusting systems and communities. So I look at it in the positive sense of the trust, is to get onto your term. But if you look at where you're taking this, it's phenomenal in the buy-in. And I want you to touch also on how in the design you want to check the power, and also how you insert humans to make sure abuses don't run and go too far. Can you think that through, and even how you use the U.S. government?
I'm having some fun chats over Twitter right now where people will say to me, a DAO is not really decentralized. Mm-hmm. It's okay if out of 1,000 people, 2 or 3 people have all the power, or most of the power, and other people just get to participate a little bit. Like, okay, that's fine, but isn't decentralized in the name?
Yeah, exactly.
Like, come on, guys.
Doesn't quite go with monopoly. So is monopoly different than decentralization?
Exactly. And so I think that the fascinating conversation that's happening in the DAO world is how much do you have to be decentralized to be decentralized? And I think the most important guiding light is to have systems in place that prevent the accumulation of power to one person. And if you do not have those in place, frankly, I think most DAOs are designed to allow the founders to maintain control. And if you allow that to happen, I don't believe you will survive. Mm-hmm. I think that if you want to be a DAO, if you want to actually create great things, you really have to design it where you lose control. And I remember going through that. So I'm used to being a CEO. I'm used to command and control. Do what I say, and if it fails, it's on me. But if it succeeds, it's because it's the plan and approach that I decided. And with a DAO, I had to literally feel, giving up control. It was a feeling.
Exactly.
Wow, I don't do this.
Thing, right?
It was a visceral thing to say, I am giving up control of this beautiful thing that I've spent 10,000 hours working on. And now I'm going to give up control. I can literally feel it in my body right now. It's like it's a painful feeling. And
but then the surprises come, right?
Yeah,
later the surprises.
Absolutely.
Come.
And I think that the cool thing is everyone should go through that process. It's actually do we really have control? Not really. It's just a human nature thing to pretend we have control.
Yeah.
And so I thought it was a beautiful thing to go through myself. I've watched We started out with 6 nonprofits. I've watched them go through the process of giving up control, and we have this beautiful conversation going on. One of the things about your book is great. He talks about the Apache Native American tribes basically winning against the U.S. government for 400 years.
Spanish and U.S. government. 400
and they had a decentralized approach to governance, so you couldn't take out the leaders because they were decentralized. And one of our core members of the DAO, her name's Ade, she's from the Cochiti tribe, and we have these wonderful discussions around governance that you could never have if I had the power, because she would have to be more, she'd have to be, I guess, a little bit more polite or whatever, or maybe she might hold back a bit.
Subservient or whatever.
Because we have equal power, in fact, she has more power than I do, we have very honest conversations about governance. And I think that is one of the greatest things about a DAO. And so if you guys are building a DAO and you wanted to have this kind of, not just fluidity, better decision-making, but it also can't go away.
Yes.
Which is amazing. Like DAOs are, they just can't go away. How do you stop it? It just can't be stopped. You should really understand the importance of not allowing individuals to accumulate power.
Absolutely. And, talk about a few of the mechanisms you put in there, because one thing I see that decentralized organizations miss sometimes is, for example, the ability to remove a member from a committee. And if you can't remove a member, then you're inviting abuse at some point. But you did that, and a lot of other control checkpoints, like what you did with the Gnosis wallet and the Treasury. Can you just talk about a few of those?
Sure.
And how you balance it, because you're kind of putting more structure in.
Yeah, so one of the things we did with our DAO committee, 6 people, we put term limits on. I mean, it's a pretty normal concept, but actually doesn't really exist in